Okay, I'm back. So, family. Family is the next aspect we're going to talk about. And family is so important during late childhood. And although it has been proven that parents spend less than half the time in middle and late childhood on caregiving and reading and doing things with their children as they did in infancy, they are still so important because they play such a huge role in that emotional and moral development. Also during this time, it is important to remember that in late childhood and adolescence, you see a lot of kids coming from step families because if you think about it in general, it takes time for somebody to fall in love, get married, have a family, get divorced, and then find someone else to remarry, therefore building a step family. So you don't see as many small children and infants in step families as you do children in late childhood and adolescence. And a lot of the adjustment problems that those children will have are adjustment problems that are similar to those dealing with divorced parents. During a typical day in late childhood, children will have approximately 300 interactions with their peers. And the book described 5 different types of children. They talked about the popular children, which everybody liked and everybody claimed as a best friend. The average children, who nobody really disliked and some people claimed as a best friend. The neglected child, who was not disliked and not really a best friend. They were just kind of like out there. The rejected child, who was disliked. And the controversial child, who was sometimes a best friend and then sometimes not liked at all. There was just really no middle ground. Also, during this time, bullying becomes a huge issue. And the book stated that 15,000 6th through 10th graders report, 1 out of 3 of them said that they had been bullied at some time in their life. And as counselors, it's important for us to realize that it's not only the victim that suffers effects of this, but the bully and the victim both are more likely to experience depression, suicide ideation, or attempt suicide. Luckily, now that schools and parents and people are more aware of this, they're taking more steps to prevent it. And it was comforting to know that out of all of the people that we interviewed for our study, all of those students said that they would report a bully or stop a bully, even if the victim wasn't necessarily a friend of theirs. And speaking of friends, during this age, kids say that they like to find friends who have things in common with them, and that kind of challenge them emotionally and cognitively to build on their strengths. Where do they find these friends? Well, more often than not, it is in school. And in schools today, you see a lot of different things going on. Effective teachers use a combination of student-centered and teacher-directed instruction to reach students. With the standardized testing, it seems like things are always in flux, so children are always having to adapt to what's going on there. And unfortunately, some schools just do not have the resources that other schools do. And the book talked about how socioeconomic status and ethnicity really play a hand in that, because a lot of times those schools who are more diverse or in a lower SES don't have the resources or experience or support that they need to be as successful. And during this age frame is when students start all of that testing and start all that, track to the future. So it's important that we really try to give them as much support as we can. When we think about culture, I found the study that I thought was interesting was Harold Stevenson's United States versus Asian Education Study. And he explored the schools in the U.S. versus China, Taiwan, and Japan. And he saw that as these students got older, the gap continued to widen academically, mainly in math. So when he went to look at the factors why, he found that in Asia, they spend about 1/4 of their school day in math, which in the United States we spend about 1/10. He also found that in Asia, they go to school an average of 240 days, whereas we go an average of 178. He also found that United States parents have lower expectations for their students, and if they're unable to grasp a concept, they think it's typically just because the child isn't capable, where Asian parents think that it is due to lack of effort or lack of instruction. And he also found that Asian parents are more likely to help with homework and that Asian children receive more homework. So I just thought, again, coming from a teacher's perspective, that was pretty interesting. So that pretty much wraps up the social emotional domain. Thank you for being so patient with me and my videotaped presentation. Have a good night.